from Thursday, China's top statistics Bureau has begun to release first-quarter economic data. The data is crucial to define the whole year's economic trend and also provide the basis for further macro control measures. As Deng Wei tells us, experts say the country's economy has started to rebound in the first quarter and is expected to remain the uptrend in the second quarter.
Some economic data in China shows that the country's economy may have started to bottom out. More and more economists are also arguing that the worst time for the world's third-largest economy may be over. China's official Purchasing Managers' Index, a measure of activity in the manufacturing sector, rose to 52.4 in March from 49 in February. This marks the first time the index has been in expansionary territory since September. The rebound suggests the country's economic stimulus measures have created demand and boosted growth. A warm-up also emerges in industrial output, which surged 11% year-on-year in February, up from 5.7% growth in December. The power consumption volume in February also went up from the previous month. This is the first time the month-on-month change was back to a positive trend. What's more, new yuan loans have seen explosive growth for 4 consecutive months. The volume totaled more than 1 trillion yuan for the second month in a row in February. China is now already more than halfway towards this year's goal of at least 5 trillion yuan in new bank lending to help cash-thirsty enterprises. The rebound has also emerged in the real estate sector. Most major cities in China witnessed an increase in housing transaction volume in February from the previous month. The series of positive signs has raised economists' confidence in the Chinese economy. Some predict that China's GDP growth will stand between 6 to 6.4% in the first quarter of the year. Deng Wei, CCTV.
The National Bureau of Statistics says China's Business Climate Index fell the first quarter of the year, and the index was 105.6, about 1.5 points lower than the fourth quarter of last year. But the decline was smaller than the 21.6-point drop in the last quarter of 2008. Meanwhile, the Entrepreneurs' Confidence Index rose 6.5 points over the last quarter of 2008 to top 101. China's Aviation Administration says both airline passenger volume and occupancy rates rose in the first quarter of this year, and domestic demand helped to spur on the market. But Sun Jiayu tells us that it is still too early to say if the entire industry is in recovery.
The transport turnover rate domestic air routes rose 13.6%. and the passenger volume increased 14.6% in the first quarter of 2009. The director of the China Aviation Administration, Li Jiaxiang, made remarks at the ongoing Sino-US Aviation Forum on Wednesday. The Transport Department was able to turn last year's losses into profits of 800 million yuan so far this year.
The domestic market, in fact, that has grown, it's a wonderful phenomena for China. One of the few that could tout that kind of growth in the first quarter.
Domestic passenger transport volume on Air China and China Southern Airlines achieved double-digit growth in the first 2 months. The passenger occupancy rate also rose by 80%.
The sector is benefiting from a series of policies issued by the government to tackle the financial crisis, especially the policies to stimulate domestic demand.
Last year, airline companies suffered losses due to a sharp drop in passenger volume. China aviation authorities issued 10 plans to revitalize the economy, among them issuing aviation subsidies and tax rebates, as well as expanding the scale of investment. Since last year, investment in aviation infrastructure has expanded to 200 billion yuan. This includes a total of 140 new or renovated airports.
According to our prediction, the domestic aviation market will continue to grow, especially in April and May.
But insiders say the good performance in the first quarter does not mean that the whole sector will begin to recover. That's because the New Year and the Chinese Spring Festival holidays helped to boost passenger volume. Meanwhile, passenger volume on international air routes dropped 21%, and freight turnover slid nearly 25%. But analysts say it will be difficult for airline companies operating international routes to turn losses into profits, especially if the world economy cannot shake off the global economic downturn in the second half of 2009. And they also say what will be challenging for the entire industry to recover is the economy does not rebound later in the year. 孙佳宇 CCTV。
Preliminary figures show auto sales in China reached nearly 1.08 million units last month, hitting a monthly record, and that exceeded the figure of 1.05 million units in March of last year. The domestic car market has continued to heat up, boosted by the government's stimulus plans to revitalize the economy. And the China Automobile Industry Association says sales volume reached nearly 740,000 units in January and nearly 830,000 units in February and broke 1 million units in March. The total sales volume in the first quarter reached over 2.6 million units, and that's an increase of 6% over the same period last year. And sales for the full year are expected to exceed 10 million units for the first time ever. Due to the macroeconomic environment, commercially used vehicles accounting for 30% of total sales volume are still experiencing a downturn, but analysts say that with the fulfillment of the 4 trillion yuan stimulus package, sales of commercial vehicles will probably increase. From this month, Chinese farmers in 16 provinces can enjoy a 13% rebate on computer purchases, and PC makers are hoping that this new scheme will help them cope with the sliding sales. Feng Ling reports.
PC demand slowed during the fourth quarter, catching the industry by surprise and clouding the outlook for the coming year. The subsidy program will enable PC makers to increase their sales to less developed but growing rural areas, which host a population of over 800 million.
According to industry estimates, only 8% of rural households have access to computers. The number is quite low. And for every 1% increase, it means 1.6 million PCs are needed. This is really a big opportunity for us.
The number of internet users in rural areas has been increasing dramatically over the past few years, but most of them don't have their own computers. The government subsidy will help attract first-time buyers. Some industry analysts estimate that the program could eventually help generate an extra 10 billion yuan in the coming 3 years for the entire industry chain.
Government really subsidy for PCs for people in rural environment, I think is an excellent first step. There have been many of these programs run around the world, and they have been very successful at bringing that capability to rural environments, to specific portions of the economy to help improve the competitiveness, whether it's teachers, small, medium business, or rural environments. So I'm very positive about that part of the stimulus package.
The PC subsidy is part of a wider subsidy program in China's stimulus package, which is designed to increase rural demand. So far, it covers items such as televisions, refrigerators, and cars. More are expected to be included in the program in the near future. Feng Ling, CCTV.
Now,